Hey guys, welcome back to the Buzz Weaver channel, and we have some very important news today. A very big event is taking place in the state of California, which is the recall election. From the Washington Post, voters to decide whether to replace Governor Newsom with a Trump-supporting Republican. What they mean by that is Larry Elder, of course, but it could be any one of 19 different potential people, but they had to throw Trump in there because if Newsom doesn't get recalled, then they can say that he was successful in defeating a Trump supporter or a Trump supporting Republican, as well as perhaps any associations with President Trump. The media is always going to take a dig at Trump because it's clickbait for one thing, and it's something they can utilize and leverage against the president. The effort to recall California Governor Newsom comes to a close Tuesday as voters head to the polls for a final day to decide whether to remove a relatively popular first-term Democrat and replace him with one of 46 other candidates. So I said 19. It's actually 46. Wow. Including Larry Elder, a conservative Republican who supports former President Donald Trump. Now, you notice I didn't mention that he was black in this because, of course, when it's a Republican who is black, they don't get that moniker put in there. They don't get that additional information, that additional context in there, unless of course, the media can always leverage it. Newsom, now in the third year of his first four-year term, has in recent weeks taken a strong lead in the recall race as more Californians became aware of the need to vote in September. Okay, how is it that these people were not aware that this was going to happen? Because this is gigantic news. This is gigantic for the Democrats, because if he gets recalled, that's going to be a huge blow not only to Newsom, but to the Democratic Party, and potentially affect the Senate, which is currently at 50-50. So this has tremendous ramifications to it. So if we look at the polls, which I don't trust, and we should never rely on them because they were absolutely off during the 2020 election, although we know the whole conniving and scheming that went on there with that particular election, as we saw in the, as I like to mention, in the Molly Ball article. And so we have the this poll from 538, which is what we also used during the 2020 election, showing that they want to keep Newsom at 57.3% and remove at 41.5%. The reason that this is significant is because the polling is always going to be off by a certain percentage. And I'm willing to bet that it is kind of off depending on the sampling and the aggregate and the aggregates overall, because the aggregates are showing that, that he will remain or they'll keep Newsom. But it will be interesting to see. But this particular election is not without its controversy, of course, which isn't really touched on. This is Larry Elder here, by the way, if anyone was curious as to who he was or what he looked like and so forth and so on. But as you can see here, this election is not without its controversy. As you can see here, you guys may recall we covered this here on the channel. California recall, over 300 recall election ballots and other paraphernalia found in a passed-out felon's car. So here you have 300 recall elections, and 300 may seem very insignificant in a gigantic state like California, but sometimes these sorts of races or these sorts of elections, as it were, do matter. And it can come down to as many as 300 votes. Because remember, here in Georgia, when it came down to President Trump and President Biden, we were only talking within, 1,800 votes or something like that. It was, I mean, there's 9 million people in Georgia, and 1,800 votes is not a lot of people. So yeah, 300 is significant. And now remember, this is just this one guy. There's no telling what other activity goes on. Now, I have to mention that in every election, there is always some form of fraud. Always. In every election, there's always some form of fraud. So this isn't anything new. I know the former president, if I mention his name, I can't use the word I just used a second ago, and the president at the same time. So suffice it to say that it happens in every election, and they were totally prepared for this, as we have covered here on the channel, how the Democrats worked alongside the election officials, how they worked alongside the lawmakers to make mail-in ballots less secure And then, of course, the pandemic came along, which gave them even more concessions, but more importantly, they gave more discretion to judges to decide and whether to pursue fraud allegations or fraud. And the judges could just use that discretion to say, well, if it's only 300 or if it's only 500, if it's only 1,000, and it doesn't appear that it's going to make a difference, I'm not going to tie up my courts. I'm not going to tie up my people on this, chasing down these particular fraud. Because like I said, guys, there's fraud in every election. I think President Trump and fellow Trump supporters are kind of going about this a little wrong. We may differ on that, but I think constantly focusing on the fraud is really not where we should be focusing. We should be focusing on the fact that there was some conniving and scheming, rule changes, law changes that really affected the election more so than just simply trying to point toward fraud. Yes, there was some shenanigans, the conniving and the scheming, but they did it all within the law. Just one of those with the old joke. If you need you need to hire a criminal attorney, right? What you need is a criminal attorney. Anyway, the joke goes on. But anyway, so of course we have the stolen ballots here in this particular incident, and then we learned just this week, San Fernando Valley residents cast provisional ballots due to equipment issues. Now, see, they've changed the name of this title. And pretty sure, this is KTLA at Channel 5 out of California. They changed the title because I think yesterday it read something to the effect of, let's see, let me look at that because I think it's important that I point this out to you guys here. You see where I keep all my images and records and information because it's crazy to keep up with all this. But see, here's the reason why I do it. See, here's KTLA 5. San Fernando Valley residents have trouble casting recall ballots. And then I posted a quote on my social media. If you guys haven't already, be sure you are following me on social media. That way you can keep up with all of the daily posts and things that I post here. Because I think it's critical and important to point this out. Because see here, this was up from the article itself. See, Bender said she filled out a provisional ballot and left really angry. Bender added that to her knowledge, many of those affected by this issue are self-identified Republicans, and she's suspicious. I'd still like to know how I voted. Yeah, she wants to know how she voted. Bender said, Dems found their solution. That's what I said. I said, Democrats found their solution by making it more complicated, making it more difficult, like they did in the 2020 election. They schemed and plotted and found ways, found loopholes, found all kinds of ways to be able to do this publisher clearinghouse sweepstakes style of mail-in ballots. A schoolmate of mine who works out in California, he works out there in Hollywood, told me that they had entertained the thought of even allowing people to print out ballots. And as you can see here from Colin Moriarty, he's kind of a middle-of-the-road kind of guy. He's a PlayStation podcaster, so a fellow gamer, but reporter, writer, and stuff for gaming, said, good news. I haven't lived in California since 2019, but I've gotten a gubernatorial recall ballot sent to me in Virginia. And he laughs. And you can see it right here. Right here. Colin Moriarty, Virginia, to be able to vote in California when he's not lived there since 2019. And here's his ballot. And I showed you guys my my application to apply for an absentee ballot. And I also, when I talked to my father, they actually sent him an absentee ballot without request. And that was part of the concession. This is what I try to emphasize to you guys. The plotting and the scheming turned out, particularly here in Georgia, that the Democrats or the politicians had worked it out because it did take Republicans to be able to pass some of these laws, particularly in Pennsylvania. So make a note of that. It actually took never-Trumper Republicans in Pennsylvania to pass some of these laws. So just keep that in mind. And so what they did was they just did like I like to mention, a publisher's clearinghouse style sweepstake of mail-in ballots to registered voters and so forth. And so everyone was just sent a ballot. And so it was pay to, I don't know if pay to win is really the correct term, but I'm basically trying to say it was a publisher's clearinghouse style of mailing. And I kind of say this tongue-in-cheek, kind of sarcastically, kind of cynically. If it were up to the Democrats, we would be voting by app. Or we would have like we would be able to do like my classmate said, we'd be able to just to print out a mail-in ballot from our homes and just fill it out and send it in. And it's just so much logistics involved in that than, say, having a person go and actually vote in person. Because voting in person demonstrates, in my opinion, that you are willing to make the effort, take the time to go and vote. And normally people who do go and vote are at least paying attention, right? They're following they're following the election, they're following the campaign, they're making informed decisions, and then they're making a conscious effort to go and actually vote, which is what I support, because I find it kind of lazy. I mean, I understand why there's rules, why we allow for mail-in ballots and why we have absentee ballots. Now, of course, absentee ballots are a little bit more stringent, a little more strict than, say, a mail-in ballot. But I can understand there's going to be times, particularly because of the pandemic, which I'm not anticipating in 2022 or 2024, but I wouldn't put it past the Democrats, who always say, never let a crisis go to waste. And we're already seeing the continual push of the variants and just the illnesses. But I think Joe Biden is really losing on that front, which is a whole other conversation. But I did want to bring this news to you guys because all eyes are on California. And I found it kind of interesting because here on Twitter, there isn't any sort of trending about this. And this is incredibly significant to them. And so the importance of this, like I said, is going to be pretty up there as far as like seeing an actual California governor recalled. And then not only that, how it's going to affect the Senate, how it's going to affect the campaign in 2022, and ultimately how it's going to affect the presidential election come 2024. And it's amazing that we're even entertaining that thought, but this is where we are right now. We're in a highly political, highly charged, hyper-aware environment where point scoring goes on every single day on Twitter, back and forth. But I thought this was very important. I wanted to bring this to you guys. And of course, if you haven't already, guys, appearing right there on the screen, that would be the channel icon for you guys here on YouTube. And you can click on that. And then when you do that, you can also click on notifications so you guys will know when there's content here on the channel. I want to thank all of you guys from New Tech, and I will see all of you guys in the next video.